Hello, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our webinar, How to Keep Clients Engaged Using Telehealth Solutions. Today, I'll be your host, Ray Saberwal, and on our panel, we have Nick Collins from CCVT, CatholicCare Victoria Tasmania, who are currently using Athena Software's cloud-based case management solution. And with him, we have Jordan Falk, Global Sales Director for Athena Software. In the next 20 to 30 minutes, we will be discussing telehealth, the options and impacts, how to enable clients for virtual service delivery, pros and cons of virtual service delivery, and then we will have the long-term impact of COVID-19 or service delivery for social organizations, and lastly, we will discuss how to keep clients engaged throughout this virtual self-service delivery model. Now, this will be an unscripted and uninterrupted video discussion without any PowerPoint slides. If you have any questions, send them through the webinar chat. We will address them and share them with you through an email after the webinar. So before we proceed, I'll let Nick and Jordan introduce themselves and make it easier for you to match the name to the face. Nick or Jordan, whosoever wants to go first, please go ahead.
Great, thank you. My name is Nick Collins, and I'm with CatholicCare Victoria Tasmania, based in Melbourne, Australia. We're a community-based organisation providing a range of different services to clients across Victoria and Tasmania, and I'm representing part of that service arm of CatholicCare Victoria Tasmania. So my role is the executive manager of operations, which encompasses oversight of all the services essentially that we provide, from counselling services to a range of settlement refugee services, chaplaincy services, school-based services. Just to give you a sense of what that sort of looks like, currently at the moment we would probably see around across CatholicCare Victoria Tasmania 2,500 clients a week, and the vast majority of those are in Penelope, which has been great. I've been with CatholicCare Victoria Tasmania for about 10 years or so. It's been an interesting experience adapting to the COVID-19 environment and telehealth. So thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, Nick, that's wonderful. Good to have you for that long. Jordan?
And yeah, thanks for the introduction, Ray. My name is Jordan Fox, and like you mentioned, I head up the sales team at Athena Software, and we make one product which is called Penelope, and CCVT has been a longtime partner of ours using Penelope, and we have thousands of agency sites around the world using Penelope every day. I wouldn't describe my role and position as sales. I wish there was a better term for it. I don't think sales comes with the best, connected emotions. We, in a space where we're selling SaaS software on the cloud, we have to ensure as a sales team that the organizations we're partnering with are a great fit for what we offer. And so it's our role in the sales team to basically assess the fit of an organization and make the call of whether Penelope is a tool that could actually help them in the long run. So I wish there was a better term other than sales, but I am on the sales team, so happy to be here today.
Oh, so that's a good point, Jordan. What we would do is in the next iteration of this discussion, we'll actually throw a poll question out. What should be your title, right?
What do you think of when you think of sales?
Exactly. But you know what? That's a good segue into what you mentioned about that. You're not exactly in sales, but you're more into helping organizations see where there's fit, so that they can enhance efficiencies or make some cost savings or time savings for their end clients. So, can you talk about, or can you clarify, how would you define telehealth, Jordan?
Well, I'd say telehealth is probably very geographically specific in terms of what kind of things people think about when they hear telehealth. Like for myself, where I'm from, telehealth is often thought of as people's ability to call in to a government number where they can receive registered nurse and doctor assistance, and that's the way that people in our geographic space think of telehealth. I think that since it has become more of a prominent topic of conversation since the pandemic started, the terminology around telehealth has, and at least in my space that I work in, shifted to remote service delivery is sort of the way that people talk about it. And it's much more broad and less complex, but I think it describes more of what people are experiencing, which is less of health delivery and more of service delivery. So that can be all kinds of things, but it's done in a remote environment. I mean, we're delivering services remotely right now. It's not health related. But I think in the human and social service space, we've, from what I see, we've shifted from the term telehealth and adopted remote service delivery.
So, Nick, is that true? Is that, since you are the part of the industry? I mean, do you think it has the connotations towards remote service delivery, remote care, or virtual delivery of the services? Is that the nuances in the industry as well, from what you hear?
Yes and no. I think certainly from we work in community services, so telehealth has a connotation around health and probably more sophisticated health treatment, right through to even doing operations remotely using technology in some way, with at the very high end in terms of health. And when you look around health services, there's been massive innovation in that space. So from our perspective, we probably would refer to it as remote service delivery, because I think the health connotation has more of a medical lens to it for us. So we probably refer to it as remote service delivery. Although I think it's used interchangeably, I think we're getting warmed up to the idea that telehealth means really maybe engaging on a video platform, but it also could be phone. And all that is remote service delivery, essentially. Yeah.
Right. So, Jordan, based on what you just mentioned, that's an interesting fact about virtual or remote service delivery or remote care. Can you discuss or share some options that are available to, social service organizations and or nonprofit agencies to enable their clients remotely?
Yeah. So, like our product, which is again a case management system, so it's a configurable place where you're going to be able to collect client and program information. And we pivoted somewhat at the beginning of the pandemic, and some of the ways we pivoted were around adopting or changing our implementation process to being a little bit more prescriptive for agencies that were reaching out to us because of the pandemic. I think, in a lot of ways, the pandemic, a lot of industries and social and human services was no different, was a spark for innovation for a lot of organizations. And it pushed a lot of people to say, okay, we may have thought of adopting some kind of software system as a possibility into a necessity. And so to help sort of adapt to that, we again took a bit of more of a prescriptive implementation approach to say, okay, as a software company, we have experience in terms of implementing systems like this, and this is what we'd recommend. Whereas in the past, we would take more of a backseat approach to say, what do you need, and listen to all the needs, and then configure an option that fits those needs. With that, of course, takes a longer implementation cycle. So organizations, because of the pandemic, have been a little bit more open to taking prescription to say, I just need to be up and running. And a good example as an anecdote would be our typical time for implementation or onboarding an organization is 3 to 4 months on an average for when somebody starts implementation to when they're live with a system. And we've had several organizations over the past month or so on board in some as low as 2 weeks, using that prescriptive approach. So obviously there's a lot of differences in terms of the kind of system you're going to roll out, but that's one of the big changes we've noticed. The last thing I would add is that the product also pivoted to allow for organizations to embed communication tools of their choice. So like a Zoom or a Skype for Business. We didn't pick one because organizations typically come with their favorite, but we had a place for somebody to embed that. And that, between the prescriptive approach where you can get up and running quickly and embedding sort of a telecommunication tool of choice, gave a lot of organizations flexibility in terms of how they could get up and running quickly.
Perfect. That was exactly what I was going to ask because I think Nick would be able to share more of that. So, Nick, how did CCVT enable virtual service delivery? I mean, feel free to share your insights on how long did it take for you or your team to switch it on? Did you have any
Yep.
technical challenges? You know, what were the implications associated with this enablement? You know, costs involved, processes, etc. Well, anything that you think could help organizations similar to yours to get enabled?
Well, the first thing I'd probably say, Jordan and Ray, was that we had a bit of a planning session in February, and we had video conferencing down as an option in the future that we were going to probably do in a year or 2 years' time. But then, in light of COVID and how that was emerging, that sort of leapfrogged straight up front and centre. And so nothing will innovate like necessity in some respects. So we just had to sort of get with the program essentially. And it was rapidly changing, as we're all aware of. So from our perspective, I think one of the things that emerged for us, that we had to actually slow down because people were really keen to just get onto Zoom or get onto Skype and start using it. And we had to say, no, hold on a second. We need to configure it properly. We need to make sure there's privacy rules, and we need to make sure there's appropriate training. It's quite different to face. So we had to sort of put the brakes on because, you know, a lot of practitioners were really keen to sort of say, let's get in and do this, and we'll catch up with all the other stuff later. But we said no. So we probably deployed with phone service delivery initially, but then at the same time concurrently did a lot of work around scoping what was going to be the right platform we would use, and we actually opted for Zoom for Business, and we had a team working on that. And at the same time as that, we actually also looking at some of these other configuration issues to do with practice, which we wanted to sort of nail down and do training. So, but I think from our perspective, certainly we had to sort of be fairly nimble and respond quickly and pull teams together to help work on some of these issues so we'd have consistency of practice, because we've got over 466 Penelope users. We have to make sure that everyone's onboarded and trained appropriately. So it took an enormous amount of resources. So basically, from our perspective, we pivoted to that as the main game and worked on some practice rules across the organisation to enable us to sort of implement once the configuration was sorted. So that was, look, it did take a bit of time, but that work was absolutely necessary around looking at all those sorts of practice rules that impact on clients to make sure that we weren't breaching privacy, there was good security, and staff were appropriately trained so that when they're logging on to Zoom or the platform they're using, that they've got really good mastery of it, know how to run it and control it appropriately, and make sure that all those sorts of things are all sorted essentially.
Right. So a couple more questions on that, Nick. Mostly around the end clients. Did you plan any communication around letting your clients know that you have now enabled virtual service delivery? And two, what was the training plan for the end clients? Was there any training involved, or if yes, how it was? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so part of the assessment process was around actually screening for capability. So clients were given the option of having a phone conversation, which was fine. We're actually doing that already in terms of moving a lot of face-to-face work straight onto the phone, mobiles, and booking appointments basically via that platform, obviously. But then at the same time, when clients were getting consent, we're actually explaining Zoom and saying, this is also another option we have. We're just doing some configuration training on this issue, but it'll be up by this date. And then from then on, they could book in for a scheduled appointment. I think by and large, a lot of the clients were saying to us that, that they felt the remote service delivery was good because the main issue was about having contact and a relationship. Phone's good, but Zoom's probably a bit better. And face-to-face is even better than that, generally speaking, but it's good enough. So I think we were giving clients a choice, and we'd go through a bit of a checklist about whether they had capability, because often there'd be issues with Zoom, and depending on people's internet connection and a whole range of issues, it may not have been suitable. So we had a bit of a checklist to go through with clients in relation to assisting them determine whether that was going to be a viable option for them. So I think where we've ended up is pretty good. We've got a good mix of Zoom plus phone work, which is working quite well now. But there have been some challenges along the way. But, we just have to address those collectively and move forward. And part of that was actually moving our workforce to work from home and looking at their IT capability as much as the client.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's wonderful. So, Nick, based on this experience in the last 4 to 6 months, what do you think are the benefits your clients must have realized with virtual service delivery? And also, let us know if you have, realized any downsides of, getting the team, the downside of any of this virtual delivery processes now.
So one of the good things was actually Penelope, in the sense that everything else was changing, but Penelope's in the cloud, so staff could actually access that at home, or it didn't matter where they were, as long as they had a computer, essentially. So there was a bit of that was actually a good thing for us, because we've been using Penelope since 2016. So I think most of our staff were already involved. The great thing was around having, I suppose, our team embed Zoom into Penelope, so they could book those Zoom appointments, or any appointment for that matter, whether it be phone, face-to-face, or Zoom, which has been good. So that was a really great benefit for us. And sorry, I've just probably lost the second part of the question.
Any downsides? Do you think is there any downside of, providing virtual service delivery model to the clients?
Yeah, look, we did do a bit of a survey with clients about their experience of remote service delivery, and we had a pretty good response rate for that. And I suppose generally the feedback was very positive. People did find that having a service was important in terms of being responsive to need, but Zoom is not everyone's cup of tea. Some people do appreciate face-to-face, and certainly some of our really distressing clients, or clients where there's real severe risk, we've had to see some clients face-to-face. So just like everything, it's probably may not be suitable for some clients, particularly for emergency relief or some really complex clients with high needs that, and maybe they don't even have the technical capability or have a computer at home. Phone may not meet that requirement either. So there's been a few cases where we've actually had to see clients face-to-face with appropriate screening in place, whether that be masks and shields and appropriate social distancing, but that's probably the exception. I think the other issue I think is just the time taken and the training with staff and the amount of support for staff. At the same time, we're trying to provide support to clients. We're also trying to support our staff to do the work they can.
That's right.
And I think for most of our staff now, particularly in Australia at the moment, in some parts of Australia, there is a bit of a second wave of COVID. So there's a general sense of flatness generally in some areas, because people are thinking, I'm locked down here for even, it was going to be 2 months and now it's 6 months.
Right, understood.
So it's just sort of managing staff expectation, and then getting used to the new normal around this is
right.
The work at the moment. So part of that has been checking in with staff, particularly around supporting our workforce to make sure that, they have got appropriate downtimes, they've got flexible work hours, we're supporting them because they're not in teams, and how we use some of our systems to connect with staff to make sure they're supported.
Perfect. Jordan, based on your engagement with similar organizations and other agencies, and of course your knowledge about the industry, do you want to add or supplement what Nick suggested about the pros and the cons of providing or enabling virtual service delivery?
Sure. Well, I think Nick hit most of the nails on the head there, to be honest. I think if you were to go at some of the cons, the drawbacks are often clinical, and we've seen some pretty robust studies come out to support it, to say that and it sounds obvious when you say it out loud, but like Nick mentioned, with different kinds of counseling contexts or different risk cases, not being face-to-face can almost exacerbate sometimes, depending again the person that you're dealing with. And we've heard that from groups that we've worked with, saying, in some counseling instances, it's great because it can increase their reach by so much. And typically, again, when we're speaking in counseling contexts, it's enabled them to be able to reach so many more people than they typically would, and into some remote areas in some cases. But the clinical drawbacks are, if you're dealing with kinds of anxiety and you're not in person, it can be a really tricky service to deliver. I think the other thing that we've heard is that and we hear this a lot in the education space, is that, organizations want to be really cognizant that they're not discriminating on certain clients or groups of clients who maybe don't have access to internet or technology, and are trying to find ways, and we hear it across, in different municipalities, working with the local governments to say, how can we equip these groups with, either short-term or permanent ways to connect to the internet and then therefore get the services that they need at home. While it does definitely reduce costs for staff and clients to travel back and forth, and in a home visiting context, a lot of cost savings there. But at the same time, you don't want to discriminate on certain individuals who don't have the means to access internet or a computer.
No, fair enough. That's wonderful. Sorry, go ahead, Nick.
No, I was just going to say, one of the cons that you just prompted me to think about, Jordan, was one of the things we've noticed in our data has been that we've had less cancellations and no-shows because people basically just have to log in or on the phone, so as opposed to turn up to a physical appointment somewhere. So looking at our data between April and June this year, looking at our data, we can see that we've had about a reduction of about 500 hours of no-shows and cancellations. So people are finding it basically a booked appointment via Zoom or a phone is very convenient. One of the only issues around that has been sometimes the privacy issue, maybe in terms of the setting for the client to receive the call, has been a little bit problematic, but that's been probably a benefit, really. And the other benefit has been we've probably had more flexibility with staff around appointment times as well. So there's some of the other benefits that have come forward because of this remote service delivery. So that's a good thing, and probably also a little bit of reduced travel for some staff where we do provide outreach, but that's pretty small.
So Nick, how do you, or I would say, how do you keep your clients engaged during these remote service delivery times? And I will ask you the same question, Jordan. Feel free to chime in or give me a collaborative answer.
Well, look, I think the issue for me is that we're trying to emulate the same face-to-face environment. So, in terms of connecting with clients, because I think the issue really, particularly that has come to the fore in COVID-19, it has been around anxiety and around one of our biggest services, emergency relief, which we are funded through the government to provide. And that's been in very strong demand. In some ways, the demand is stronger than our capability, but we just have to manage that as best we can. And that's giving financial assistance to people because they've lost employment, whether that be paying utilities or, assisting with food vouchers, those type of things. So I think the issue we've probably seen looking at our data once again in Penelope has been that we've probably seen at some respects some less clients, but seeing clients for a longer period of time, but in shorter episodes of service in terms of checking in and touching base. So, and I think the other thing that has been useful is that I think I spoke a few minutes ago about we did a survey. We extracted all the phone numbers from our Penelope database around clients to get a client's experience, their client experience of remote service delivery, whether that be phone or video, and the feedback was overwhelmingly very positive. So that was really encouraging for staff to see that, and I suppose the other issue has been that we've been able to provide a pretty timely response, whether that be phone or video conferencing, getting back to that issue around flexibility. So I think it is about checking in with clients because the top issue has been anxiety and the other issue has been around responding to emerging need. So I think we've done well in that space to be able to at least connect with clients and maintain a relationship and then refer on if we can't provide assistance to other organisations and work in a pretty collaborative way because we're all in this together essentially. So I think it is around connection with clients and being probably more episodic. So you might see clients a bit more frequently, but maybe for shorter duration given the type of, I suppose, modality we're engaging with clients because you don't want to be on a Zoom meeting for a really long time.
No, makes sense. Jordan?
Yeah, and I would pad that and say, agreed. But say we've had a lot of groups and individuals come to us looking for resources to help educate their clients on the security and privacy around the types of interactions they're having because, yeah, like Nick said, well, there's anxiety, natural anxiety around meeting virtually on both sides, on the provider and the client. And so if people can, be educated to a certain extent on the kinds of security and privacy that exist in systems, that can help alleviate some of that. And we've had a lot of people, requesting that kind of information from us in a bite-sized way, so we're not getting too in depth. The other thing I would say is we see a lot of organizations who are putting some of the service delivery in their clients' hands. So if let's say if there are goals that are trying to be achieved out of the people they're working with, they want to give some of those goals and progresses to the clients to see on their end. So if there's a way for the client to not only talk those out, but also have like a hard copy or a soft copy of the goals that they're working towards, if there's a care plan or progress being made, that makes a big difference clinically. And from a technology standpoint, that's what we aim to try to enable groups to be able to do.
Perfect. Well, thank you, gentlemen, for your valuable time and incredible insights. We have that's all the time we have for now. It was actually a very engaging discussion. We have received a few questions through the chat. And as I mentioned earlier on at the start, we will address all of them and share the responses with all of you in a follow-up email after the webinar is over. And Jordan, for what if there is somebody who's trying to look for an assessment or of their environment? What should they do?
Feel free to go to athenasoftware.net and reach out to us either by, there's like a form on our website available, or the info at email address, and someone would be happy to reach out and have a quick phone call to engage.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. So folks, you know what, for me, being a moderator, if any one of you is planning to enable your clients on a virtual service delivery model, Nick has graciously agreed to provide more input, be it through their survey or through their experiences that their team went through enabling this environment. If you want to talk to Nick, let us know. Me or Jordan will help you facilitate that conversation with Nick and his team as well. So good luck and stay safe. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy your day.
Take care.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks, Jordan.